Hi, welcome back to the Chef Share sessions on EPCC TV, done with El Paso Community College Culinary Arts. You can find us on YouTube and on EPCC TV. Chef Rosser back again with you. And today what we're going to be going over is quick bread mixing methods. Quick breads are things like muffins, biscuits, and other types of loaves like banana bread, what have you. The goal with these mixing methods is not to overmix. Now, what quick breads are, as opposed to things like yeast breads where we develop gluten, quick breads use chemical leaveners in order to produce CO2, and so hence they're quick. We don't have to go through that extended proofing time with yeast products in there. So we're using these chemical leaveners, and therefore we don't need to develop gluten. And if we do, we're going to end up with a tougher product. So these mixing methods are all really quick and easy. I have a couple of my students, Hilda and Aaron, are going to show you guys a couple of mixing methods today, the muffin method and the biscuit method, and I'm going to show you the creaming method, and I'm going to make a double chocolate loaf today. It's a fun little, like a miniature coffee cake. Now we can do these in a muffin tin, or we can make a larger loaf out of them. I'm just going to show you a small loaf preparation. So thanks for joining us. As always, if you like these videos, send us comments, like, share, and if there's something you'd like to see us do as far as a cooking presentation or a method, please send us an email. We'd be glad to try to get that on air. Thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoy the show.
Hi guys, my name is Hilda Mendoza and I'm a chef student here at EPCC. I'm gonna be demonstrating the biscuit method for the quick breads. We're gonna start off with the dry ingredients. I have 300 grams bread flour and I have 300 grams pastry flour. And I also need to swift my ingredients, and they need to be cold when starting this recipe. And we're also gonna follow up with the rest of the dry ingredients, which I have my baking soda for 25 grams. I have my baking powder, 31 grams. And I also have my sugar, 30 grams. We're gonna set these on the side. Baking soda. And then we want to add the cold butter to the flour. And right next, we're gonna work with the butter and the flour by pinching and trying to get this mix, but not all the way to melting the butter, just like pinching between the cold ingredients. These are ready diced cube butters, so you want to get a small amount so it gets well distributed. Since the flour, it's a little dry, so you want to get the butter a little form between. It takes a little time because it's hard, but you just want to get out the cube shapes from the butter. I have a few more pieces to go because they're still like chunks. So you want to flat them out. still have more pieces to go. So you want to disappear these cubes because when you get the biscuit shape, you want it on the even, because sometimes they will raise unevenly, so it has more flour on the other side, so you want to get these well distributed. We're almost there. Okay. This just needs a little bit more pinching in the butter. There we go, there's more smaller lumps. So don't be afraid if you have a few bumps, as long as they are well distributed and more even than just like the dices of butter in the mix. Okay, I think we're good with this. And now we're gonna follow with the buttermilk. So it's gonna be 400 grams. And you're just gonna use your hands and mix. And then you're just gonna gather all the mix together and make it into one whole piece. So as you can see, it's more moisty, but it's not liquid. So wanna get the rest out of our hands. And make sure you get a nice flat table where you can roll out your dough. It has to be cleaned so you don't get any color or dark color in your dough. You're just gonna work your way out of the bowl once you get a better shape. A little bit more solid, and you're just gonna start folding. And if you think you need a bowl before compacting the flour with the butter, then go ahead and use the mixing bowl. So you will notice there's whiter parts or like yellowish. You could see the butter between the dough. So those are gonna give you the flakiness. Some air is gonna get trapped, so it's gonna give more raised. You don't wanna over mix the dough because it gets tough and it will be really hard to spread out after, or you will not get the perfect rise for the perfect biscuit. Okay. So I think I'm good with those folds, and now we're gonna do a rectangle shape. So that way we have better folds and more even when portioning the sizes. And if you need to dust your table, go ahead and do that so you don't have any butter in the table. You can either use this dough cutter to make the shape and then just press on it. Make sure you don't fold once you're doing now the shape so it doesn't over mix. You can use these two. In between, just check that it's not moist. So in case when you start folding, the butter doesn't stick to the table. So now we're getting more of the rectangle shape and more even. So now that we have a better rectangle shape, I'm gonna make this longer. You want to do 3 folds in total. So it's been more flatter. And we are gonna begin where our first fold. So that's one. And then we're gonna rotate. And then you will get this first fold. You rotate 90 degrees. Make sure you don't pound so hard so you don't break the mix, but just make sure you get those layers well distributed, and so these layers are gonna give us the height. You can reshape again, just a tiny bit. We're gonna go into our second fold and maybe add more flour. then we're gonna form again a rectangle shape the best we can. And we're gonna go on our third and last fold. Rotate 90 degrees. Add more flour if you need to. I'm adding flour because I see some butters that is sticking out of the bread. And we're gonna make our best in forming the last rectangle. We want these about an inch tall. So by going again on the sides, it's gonna help me form the rectangle. We're just about there. Make sure you touch your dough and make sure there are even sizes. So now I'm just looking for my height. That way I spread out from the sides and then work where I need to work, so make it even sizes. And then I go back to my rectangle. Right before starting your recipe, make sure you have a sheet tray set up for them to be placed into the oven. Okay. So now we just got into our perfect height, and we're gonna start cutting them out with a round cutter. So gonna have these right here. So you wanna get them cut and never twist. So just straight out. Just pick them up and start placing them. And you wanna go one after another, very close, so we take advantage of the whole dough. Now with the rest of the batter, you can still knead this, but just the last fold must be just once, so that way you don't get a tough dough. So we're gonna put this on the side and let me show you the biscuits. So to finish these ones, we're gonna do a butter wash. I have already melted butter and we're just gonna do a small wash. This will go into the oven at 400 degrees for about 10 to 15 minutes. And we're finished with the biscuits preparation. Okay, so we just got our biscuits cut and light butter on top. We're just gonna put them in the oven for about 10 to 15 minutes in a 400 degrees oven. And that's about it. So they'll be ready after the 10-15 minutes, and then make sure it gets a well golden color for them.
Hello, I'm Gallegos here. I'm a student chef at EPCC Culinary program. Today I'm going to be explaining the proper mixing method for muffins. So first, you want to mix all your dry ingredients into a bowl and whisk them together. I'm going to start off with 36 grams of baking powder, 600 grams of bread flour, 420 grams of sugar, just regular granulated sugar, and 7.5 grams of salt, just regular table salt. Then you just want to mix it all together so it's evenly distributed. Okay. Then from there, we're going to go ahead and I have 420 grams of already melted butter. So to that, I'm gonna go ahead and add the milk to cool it down so that way we don't cook our beaten eggs. And that's 320 grams of milk. To that, I'm gonna add 180 grams of already beaten eggs. Grams of vanilla extract to the same wet mixture. And we're just going to slowly start pouring this into our dry. Remember, you want to use a spatula, not a whisk, to mix these two. just so it doesn't over mix. Just slowly fold and mix in. Remember to be scraping the sides to get all the excess dry. Okay, so we're just going to continue to scrape the sides of our bowl just until all of the dry flour is incorporated into our entire mixture. You don't want to see any white flour. So as much as you can scrape off the sides is the best deal. Then to there, we're gonna set this aside just for a second. We're gonna be making blueberry muffins today. So I have some fresh blueberries that I just rinsed, put in a bowl with the damp paper towel to absorb the rest of the moisture. To this, I'm gonna actually dust them in some all-purpose flour. This is so that they stay in suspension, so that way they don't just sink to the bottom and all the blueberries at the bottom, so you get an even distribution of the blueberries to each muffin. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab a sifter, pour these into here. Just kind of put this over to not make a mess, and then just lightly dust them with some, just like I said, all-purpose flour. And then these. Just keep adding flour just a little bit at a time till each blueberry is pretty much evenly coated. And again, this is just so that way they don't sink to the bottom of our mixture. They'll stay in suspension. And just like that, knock off the excess. We're gonna go ahead and throw them in there. Move this to the side. And then again, just fold them in gently. You don't want to crush the blueberries before we start baking them. Okay, so from here, I'm gonna go ahead and I've already prepped my sheet tray, my muffin pans, with just any kind of muffin cups. And to that, I'm gonna go ahead and use a portioning scoop. This just depends on the size of muffins you wanna make. I'm using a smaller one, so that way I don't overfill the cups. And I'm just gonna go ahead and get a little bit at a time and just start portioning them out. One at a time. Every now and then you want to kind of mix up your mixture just to make sure that you're getting blueberries into every one. When you're doing this, you want to make sure that each one is pretty much around the same size. That way they all cook one evenly and that they all look the same too when they come out. Like I said, every now and then, just kind of give it a good stir. Keeps it moist, keeps it from drying out, and you incorporate the blueberries back in. Next, we're gonna go ahead and put these blueberry muffins into a 400-degree oven on low fan. Again, it just depends on your oven at home or wherever. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. So we're gonna go ahead and put our muffins into this 400-degree oven. I'm gonna go ahead and put it in the middle. They take about 20 to 30 minutes depending on your oven. I'm gonna go ahead and set a timer for 15 minutes. And every 5 minutes, I'll go ahead and rotate them just so that way they cook evenly and the browning doesn't happen just on one side.
All right, so we're gonna start that double chocolate loaf now. We're gonna start with 300 grams of butter, and I've got here 390 grams of granulated sugar. I'm gonna put those in the mixer, and I'm gonna start the creaming method. And the creaming method, if you've ever made most cookies, drop type cookies like oatmeal chocolate chip, that you're gonna perform the creaming method where the fat, typically butter, but it could be shortening, and your sugar, it could be a mixture of brown sugar, white sugar. You're gonna put those in the mixer and soften those together until you get a light, fluffy consistency out of that. And that's exactly what I'm gonna start with right here. All right, so let me get this on. I'm gonna start at fairly low speed because that butter's in a pretty large chunk. I just wanted to start breaking that up, and then we'll turn it up as it combines with the sugar. It's doing its thing, breaking down. The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start whisking all of my dry ingredients together. Now my dry ingredients, what I have here is some all-purpose flour, and I've got 750 grams. I've got here 5 grams of salt, and I've got 15 grams of baking soda. And the baking soda is the chemical leavening agent that I was talking about earlier, and that's what's gonna give it its lift. And we're also gonna use some buttermilk in this recipe, and the acidity from the buttermilk is what is gonna help that loaf achieve that lift. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and sift all of these together. I just wanna make sure that I'm breaking up any lumps of flour so I get a nice even distribution of this product once I add this in at the end. And we'll go through the final stages of this mixing method. And I'm gonna add about half of my flour and alternately with about half of my baking or buttermilk in order to get the finished loaf. Otherwise it might get too wet and you have a bit of a problem with consistency. But sifting is a really important part, and I'll show you why here at the bottom of my sifter. All those big lumps of flour, we're definitely looking to try to break those guys up into a nice, even, consistent mixture. And this takes a minute, but we've got time since our creaming is happening. I'm also melting 300 grams of chocolate, just regular, kind of off-the-shelf bittersweet chocolate chips. You can use Toll House chips. It really doesn't matter. And then we're gonna add some more chocolate chips to the finished loaf, just so we have that textural difference in there. All right. Once we get everything sifted out, push everything through, and that is our dry mixture. That's ready to get mixed in. Now we're gonna come back here and we're gonna check our creaming mixture. Sorry. I'm gonna get my spatula. I'm gonna turn this up. And if you can see where it's coming together now, but it's not quite as light and fluffy as we would like to see it. So we're gonna let that go for a minute or so and really lighten that up. And then just remember, the colder your butter is, the longer this process takes. So I like taking the butter out an hour or two prior to the mixing of these products, just so that it's a little easier and quicker. I like using my eggs closer to room temperature too. So I usually take my butter and my eggs out a couple hours before I start a mix like this, just to ease the process along, speed it up. All right, I'm gonna turn my back and check my chocolate, make sure everything's melted. And I'll bring this up here so you guys can take a look. Now this is just plain old chocolate. I've got it nice and melted. I've got it over a double boiler so that it's a nice gentle heat. And I'm gonna keep it on that double boiler until I put it in with my cream mixture so that it stays nice and warm. So that's going to be the next step. I'm going to stop my bowl, and this is a really important part of making really almost any kind of pastry product that you're going to use on a mixer. We want to scrape down our mixing bowl frequently so that anything that is stuck to the sides or the bottom gets pulled off and put back into the mix. Otherwise, what you can have is a very inconsistently mixed product. Because if cold butter gets stuck to the sides and the bottom of your mixing bowl, what happens is that the rest of the mix just kind of goes around over it, and you need to take a rubber spatula and scrape all that down so that everything is consistently mixed together. And I try to knock everything off of the paddle attachment as well, just to ensure that my mixture is as thoroughly mixed as it should be. Now, once we start adding flour to this is where we want to avoid over mixing. So getting that mixture to the proper consistency before we start adding our dry ingredients is extremely important. All right, so I'm going to turn this back on. I'm going to let it go for a minute, and then we're going to add our chocolate to our cream mixture. And I can put some speed on this now in order to facilitate it getting light and fluffy, which is the consistency that we want out of this product at this point. Because that butter's completely softened and the sugar's starting to liquefy. And what I'm looking for this to do is kind of evenly disperse on the sides of the bowl, which tells me it's nice and soft and fluffy. And if you can see from the overhead shot, that's happening right at this point. We don't have any bare spots on the side of the bowl. And if one pulls up, it fills in immediately, which is what we're looking for. All right, so now that way we know it's time to add our chocolate into our creamed mixture. Now this chocolate's kind of gooey and heavy and thick, and this can be, this gets a little bit messy, so I try to work as clean as I possibly can, just because of, I don't want to be wearing this for the rest of the day, so I try to be careful getting this in there. And one of my kind of philosophies is don't leave anything behind. Every bit of that 300 grams that we measured out into this bowl, I want to try to get every bit of that out of here. So, and if I leave that bowl with a bunch of chocolate in it, I'm just leaving that out of my recipe, and basically that's money that's going down the drain when I send this to the dishwasher. So I'm a big stickler for that, because at one point in my career, my boss told me what I'm leaving behind in the bowl represents my raise. So I took that really seriously. And I try to pass that philosophy on to my students as far as utilizing the product that you have to the best of your abilities. All right, so getting that in there. And I'm going to give this a couple of turns real quick, and then I'm going to go ahead and again scrape down my bowl just to ensure that everything's mixing consistently. And that hot chocolate is really going to kind of soften up that butter in there, and you're going to see a big change in the consistency and texture of this product in the bowl. And that's perfectly fine. But you'll also notice that we've got a lot of product stuck to the side of the bowl, and that's another reason why we want to scrape down regularly. All right? So everything's nice and mixed. We're just going to get our scrape down done, try to get all that chocolate off the side and the top of the bowl. And now you can see how inconsistently that was mixed when I'm scraping this bowl down, and how important that part of the mixing procedure really, really is. Because without doing that, you run the risk of having just a bad result from the end product. So get everything stirred around, scrape off your spatula. And this may seem a little tedious, but in order to get the best possible results, following this kind of procedure is really key to success. go. Get this thing back on. And now with everything scraped up, we're looking good. All right, the next thing that's gonna go in is I'm gonna start adding my 3 eggs. And the eggs are not whisked together. Kind of like, this is a real similar process to something like making banana bread. Very, very similar process with the creaming. We want to add our eggs one at a time. That's really important. If I added all 3 eggs in at the same time, they would never fully incorporate and the mixture would look broken. So by adding them one at a time, the eggs will emulsify with the rest of the mixture, which is very important to having a properly mixed loaf or muffin or whatever form you're going to bake this off in. And it happens fairly quickly as long as you don't dump them all in at the same time. I'm going to turn that off, and you should scrape down in between the additions of your eggs just really quick. And this mixture is much more liquid than it was even when we added the chocolate. So quick and easy, just a quick scrape down. Try to get everything off of my spatula. Now this method is a little more involved than the other 2 we're doing today. So it's a little more time consuming, but we're gonna get more product out of it, hopefully. And it's a good look at the 3 primary mixing methods for quick breads. All right, egg number 2. And you see that happens really quickly, and now you're starting to see that really light, fluffy looking mixture, almost like a buttercream. And then I'm gonna get egg number 3 in, scrape it down one last time, and then we're gonna go with our wet ingredients and our dry ingredients alternately. All right. Get everything off the sides and the bottoms. Get my paddle attachment. All right. And I can still feel a little bit of that granulated sugar in there, but most of it is softened up to the point where it's almost liquefied, and that's exactly what we're looking for out of this stage in our mixture. Go ahead and put this back on. I'm going to give it some speed at this point. Just to ensure that everything is incorporated. All right. Okay, now is the critical part. So I've got my buttermilk here, and the buttermilk is 620 grams. And I'm gonna add about half of that to this mixture. If I add any more than about half of this to this mixture, it's gonna start looking broken. And that is not what we're looking for. So we're trying to extend the emulsion that we've created with the egg products and the butter. So we add about half of the buttermilk. Let me get a couple more drops in there. Wait till that's incorporated. Okay. Now I'm going to drop my bowl, and I'm going to add about half of my dry mixture. I stop the mixture to add the dry because if the paddle attachment is going, it tends to fly everywhere. So I'll get my half in there. That's roughly half. And kind of smack the mixer. I start on stir, and then I'll lift the bowl so it doesn't fly everywhere. Stir that on low until it starts incorporating. And I don't want that to get fully mixed, so I'm going to start adding my second incorporation of the buttermilk, the last half of it, at this point. And now you can see that is starting to look like a real cake batter. All right. Try to get as much of that out of there as we can. And before that's completely mixed in, coming back in with the rest of my dry. Let me just move this paddle out of the way. There we go. So I can show you the rest of that dry mix going in. Most of that out of there. Again, start on stir so we don't make a mess. And then slowly lift your bowl. As that mixes in. And what we're looking for is just a uniform mixture. And before we get there, I'm going to add my chocolate chips. And my second measure of chocolate chips is 375 grams. And as that goes in, you're finishing your mix. And like we said, being very careful not to overmix. We want to just get those chocolate chips mixed in, shut it off. That's it. The mixing is done. I'm going to take the paddle and the bowl off of the mixer, and I'm going to give it one last turn with my spatula before I start panning this up. And I'm using mini loaf pans today. I'll show you the preparation that I did on the pans in just a second as soon as I get this mix off. And if you see a little bit of dry flour in there, it's not too bad. You just don't want to see any big lumps of it in there. And that's one of the reasons why we sift this product, to aerate that flour and to break it up so that we don't see it in the finished mix, because that could be, that'll give you inconsistent results. So I'm just going to scrape down this whole bowl. I hope you can see that from the overhead shot, and give this one final fold. I just want to make sure that anything that was stuck to the bottom of the bowl or to the sides gets incorporated with the mass. And I'm just doing a really gentle fold, trying to get all areas of the bowl to ensure that we have a consistent, even mixture. All right. So there we go. That is our batter. And I'm going to get about 7 or 8 mini loaves out of here. And I'll show you the pan that I'm using and the portioning scoop that I'm using. All right. Give me 1 second. I'm going to kind of straighten up a little bit, get some of my empties out of here. And show you my pans. So these are just standard mini loaf pans, and I'm sure you've seen these at whatever kind of cooking store, whether it's Bed Bath & Beyond or restaurant store, it doesn't matter. This is about a 16-ounce loaf pan. What I've done is taken parchment paper, cut it into strips, sprayed the pans, and I lay this in there because that parchment paper helps me lift those out when they are done cooking. So it's just a little sling that sits in the bottom of the pan. It's just for ease of use. By no means do you have to do that. Now you can prep your pans by rubbing them with butter and sprinkling them with flour, the old-fashioned method. I'm a fan of the cooking spray, especially with these quick breads, because that way you don't run the risk of having that kind of flour, that caked on flour look on the outside. They come out really clean. You peel that parchment paper off, easy, quick and done. And it makes cleanup of these pans a lot simpler. So let me find my portioning scoop and we will continue. Okay, so I've got my portioning scoop, and here it is. It's a rather large portioning scoop, and these are oftentimes called ice cream scoops. I like calling them the lunch lady scoop, but these are great for getting really consistent portions out of whatever product, especially a battered product like this, or something where you're using a rather loose dough. This is perfect to get a really consistent portioning out of. So I'm going to start my portioning, and what I like to do is just a flat scoop up the side of the mixing bowl. And if my little parchment paper sling falls in there, I'll just hold it while I get a scoop in front of it. And I'm going to put 4 flat scoops in here, and then I'm going to level it. And the way to level this is, and I'll move this stuff aside, I use a towel on the counter and just lightly tap it. You don't have to do much more than that. That's ready to go in the oven. I'll pull on the sling just in case it's wrinkled under there, and that's ready to go in. So I'm going to fill the rest of my pans, and then we'll take a look at these going into the oven. and see and check them out when they're done. Okay, so I've got my 8 mini loaf pans here. Typically we're gonna bake these at 400 degrees if we're doing like a muffin, a smaller preparation. Since this is a larger preparation, I'm gonna put it in at 375 degrees for about 30 minutes. And if it was a really large loaf pan, I'd probably put it in at 350 degrees, just so that we don't get burning on the outside and have an undercooked center. So we'll set our timer on these for 30 minutes and we'll check them out when they're done. Thanks for joining us for another Chef Share session on EPCC TV with El Paso Community College Culinary Arts. We hope you liked the mixing methods for quick breads, and you go make some quick breads at home, biscuits, muffins, or loaves. Please, as always, let us know if there's anything you'd like to see from us. And if you like our videos, please share them, comment, like, and subscribe. We'll be back next time with another exciting Chef Share session.